You do not encounter toxic people by accident. They arrive with precision. They enter your life at the exact point where you are avoiding something within yourself. There is a silent intelligence beneath your conscious choices. It watches what you refuse to feel. It notices the wounds you pretend are healed. And it sends messengers, not to comfort you, but to expose you. You call them toxic because they disturb your peace. But long before they ever appeared, your peace was already fractured. They simply touched the fracture. What feels like misfortune is often alignment. What feels like invasion is often invitation. And what feels like betrayal is often a mirror held too close to your face. The unconscious does not speak in words. It speaks in patterns. It speaks through repetition. And when it cannot reach you internally, it reaches you externally, through people. The question is not why toxic people enter your life. The real question is, what part of you opened the door without your awareness? From the moment you are born, your nervous system begins recording reality, not as memory but as sensation. Before you can speak, your body learns what safety feels like and what it does not. Your muscles tighten around fear, your breath adapts to tension, your heart learns when to accelerate and when to retreat. Trauma does not live in stories, it lives in posture, in tone, in reflex. When you are hurt and cannot fight or flee, your body chooses another strategy, suppression. You push emotions downward. You swallow anger. You compress grief. You numb fear. But nothing truly disappears. What is suppressed becomes structure. It shapes your identity quietly, invisibly. You may grow into someone who is agreeable, calm, accommodating. You may pride yourself on your patience, your empathy, your tolerance. But beneath this image often lies a deeper truth. You learned that expressing yourself was dangerous. Toxic people are drawn to this structure like heat-seeking missiles, not because they consciously sense weakness, but because your nervous system signals familiarity. Your body recognizes chaos as normal. Your unconscious recognizes dominance as intimacy. This is not self-blame. It is self-recognition. You do not choose toxic people with your mind. You attract them with your unhealed physiology. Your body does not crave peace. It craves what it knows. And if pain was once paired with love, control will feel like connection. Disrespect will feel like attention. And instability will feel alive. You may wonder why you feel energized around them at first, why your heart races, why the silence feels unbearable, why the conflict feels strangely intimate. This is not love. It is activation. Your nervous system is reliving a past it never resolved. And the unconscious hopes that this time the ending will change. But it rarely does, because what is unconscious cannot be corrected. It can only be repeated. There is a part of you that you have not wanted to see. Not because it is evil, but because it is powerful. It is the part that contains your anger, your selfishness, your hunger, your refusal. You were taught to exile this part. You learned that being good meant being quiet, that being loved meant being agreeable, that being safe meant being small. So you buried the shadow. But what is buried alive does not stay silent. It waits. Toxic people often live from their shadow openly. They dominate, manipulate, provoke. They express what you have forbidden yourself to feel, and this creates a dangerous attraction. You are not drawn to them because you are weak. You are drawn to them because they embody what you disowned. They act without guilt. They take without asking. They express rage without collapse. And somewhere deep within you, there is admiration mixed with fear. You tolerate what you secretly wish you could express. You excuse what you have never allowed yourself to become. This is the most uncomfortable truth. You stay longer than you should because they carry a piece of you. Your suppressed anger finds voice through their cruelty. Your suppressed boundaries find expression through their dominance. Your suppressed power finds shape through their destruction. But because you have not integrated these traits consciously, they appear externally, uncontrolled, exaggerated, dangerous. The shadow does not disappear through denial. It disappears through integration. Until then, it will keep appearing in others, demanding recognition. Toxic people are not random intruders. They are living symbols of what you have split off from yourself, and every interaction is an invitation to reclaim what you abandoned. Fear is not always loud. Sometimes it disguises itself as loyalty, as hope, as patience. You tell yourself you are staying because you understand them, because you see their wounds, because leaving would mean giving up. But beneath these reasons often lies a deeper fear. If you leave, who are you? When identity is built around endurance, suffering becomes meaning. When self-worth is built around being needed, toxicity becomes purpose. The body remembers early lessons. It remembers when love was conditional, when affection followed obedience, when connection required sacrifice. So when a toxic person withholds, criticizes, or destabilizes you, something ancient awakens, a reflexive urge to prove your worth, to earn safety, to restore balance. This is not conscious choice. It is survival memory. Your body tightens. Your breath shortens. Your thoughts loop. You become smaller without noticing. You explain yourself excessively. You abandon your instincts. And the more you betray yourself, the more powerful they feel. This dynamic is not about them winning. It is about you disappearing. Avoidance plays a central role here. Avoidance of grief. Avoidance of loneliness. Avoidance of confronting the emptiness that remains when the relationship ends. Toxic people distract you from your own inner void. They fill space with intensity. They replace silence with drama. And silence is terrifying when you have never learned how to sit with yourself. So you stay, not because you are blind, but because seeing clearly would demand change. Awareness does not arrive as comfort, it arrives as rupture. The moment you begin to see the pattern, something inside you destabilizes. The familiar narrative collapses. The roles no longer fit. You feel grief, not just for what happened, but for how long you abandoned yourself. You feel anger, not just toward them, but toward your own silence. This is the beginning of integration. Your body begins to release what it has been holding. Your posture shifts. Your voice changes. Your boundaries stop feeling like aggression and start feeling like truth. You no longer seek intensity. You seek coherence. You no longer confuse anxiety with passion. You no longer mistake chaos for depth. Toxic people lose interest when they can no longer access your shadow unconsciously. They cannot survive where there is clarity. They dissolve when they are no longer needed to carry what you have reclaimed. And this is the quiet ending no one talks about. They leave not because you fought them, but because you no longer recognize them as fate. You stop asking why they came. You understand why they were necessary. They were the language your unconscious used when you refused to listen. They were the pain that forced awareness. They were the darkness that revealed your own hidden light. Not gentle, but real. And when you finally stand alone, not in isolation but in wholeness, something profound happens. The world does not become safer, but you become less afraid, and toxic people no longer find a home in you. The shadow is not what you fear becoming. It is what you already are, but refuse to acknowledge. When this refusal persists, the psyche finds another route. What cannot be lived consciously will be lived symbolically, and symbols arrive in human form. You begin to notice a strange pattern. Certain people provoke you instantly. Their tone irritates you. Their confidence feels intrusive. Their indifference wounds you more than it should. This reaction is not random. It is resonance. The shadow reacts before the mind can intervene. Your body tightens, your jaw clenches, your stomach contracts. These are not judgments, they are recognitions. The traits you condemn most violently in others often point to traits you disowned early in life. Not because they were immoral, but because they were inconvenient. Anger may have threatened attachment. Selfishness may have threatened approval. Desire may have threatened safety. So you learn to amputate parts of yourself to survive. But amputation does not remove sensation. It creates phantom pain. Toxic people activate this pain relentlessly. They behave in ways you secretly forbade yourself to behave. They say no when you say yes. They take when you give. They demand when you endure. And the psyche watches. Part of you despises them. Another part watches closely. almost hypnotized. This inner conflict is exhausting because it is unresolved. You oscillate between moral superiority and quiet envy, between condemnation and fascination. This is how the shadow announces itself. The danger does not lie in acknowledging these traits. The danger lies in letting others live them for you. When you refuse to integrate your shadow, you project it. And projection creates dependency. You need the toxic person to carry what you will not. You need them to be aggressive so you can remain passive. You need them to be cruel so you can remain kind. You need them to be irresponsible so you can feel responsible. But this balance is false. It slowly erodes your sense of self. You begin to exist only in reaction. Your identity becomes a counterweight to theirs. Without them, you feel undefined. This is why separation feels terrifying. Not because you will miss them, but because you will finally meet yourself. Integration demands courage of a different kind. Not the courage to confront others, but the courage to confront your own capacity. To admit, I too am capable of anger. I too can say no. I too have destructive impulses. This admission does not make you dangerous. It makes you whole. The integrated person does not act out the shadow. They contain it. They know their aggression, so it does not erupt unconsciously. They know their selfishness, so it does not masquerade as resentment. They know the IR desire for power, so it does not hide behind submission. Toxic people sense this shift immediately. They lose their leverage. Their behavior no longer hooks into your blind spots. You no longer need them to express what you have reclaimed. And something subtle but decisive changes. You stop moralizing. You stop idealizing. You stop explaining. You see clearly, not with judgment but with depth. The shadow, once integrated, becomes strength. It becomes boundary. It becomes grounded presence. And from that presence, the psyche no longer needs to summon external chaos to demand your attention. The lesson has been learned. The symbol dissolves. What remains is not purity, but solidity, not innocence, but awareness. And awareness is the only protection that truly lasts. There comes a moment, quiet, almost invisible, when the pattern loses its grip. Not because the world has changed, but because you have stopped negotiating with your own fragmentation. You no longer ask why certain people hurt you. You no longer ask why you attract what wounds you. The question itself dissolves because it belonged to a previous level of awareness. You see now that toxic people were never the origin of your suffering. They were the expression of an inner division. They appeared where you were not whole. They entered where you were split. This understanding does not bring relief in the way comfort does. It brings gravity. You feel the weight of responsibility, not as blame, but as authorship. Your life. Is no longer a series of unfortunate encounters. It is a symbolic narrative shaped by what you avoided, denied, and postponed within yourself. And this realization is sobering. You recognize how often you mistook endurance for virtue, how often you confused empathy with self-erasure, how often you called fear love because you did not yet know the sound of your own voice when it was unafraid. The body begins to respond to this recognition. Breath deepens without effort. Muscles release patterns they held for years. The nervous system no longer scans constantly for threat disguised as intimacy. You become less reactive, not because you are numb, but because you are present. Presence has weight. It does not rush. It does not plead. It does not explain itself. Toxic people cannot remain where there is no unconscious invitation. They rely on ambiguity, on unspoken contracts, on guilt that masquerades as morality. Clarity starves them, and clarity does not announce itself loudly. It is felt as a firmness beneath your words, as a stillness in your refusal, as an absence of justification. You no longer need to be understood. You only need to be aligned. This is the quiet end of the cycle. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, not closure in the way stories promise, but something deeper, integration. You carry your anger without acting it out. You carry your tenderness without offering it to those who would consume it. You carry your capacity for darkness without letting it rule you, or pretending it does not exist. The psyche no longer needs to send you messengers in human form. The lesson has entered consciousness. The symbol has completed its task. And what remains is not happiness. It is not certainty. It is not peace as an escape. What remains is wholeness, a self that no longer fragments to survive, a nervous system that no longer confuses chaos with connection, a mind that no longer lies to itself to avoid solitude. You stand alone, but not isolated, separated, but not empty. And in that state, something irreversible occurs. The question, why did they enter my life, no longer matters. Because you understand now,